I think there's some people that have taught me that. One of my biggest mentors to this day is Jim Hall, coached out of Georgetown, where, I know I'm long-winded here a little bit, but he did something for our White Oaks program in my grade 12 year. So he got appointed the head athletic director in Georgetown, and that's where he's from, the historic Georgetown program. And he told Georgetown High School, I'm not going to take this job unless you let me go back every day and coach my high school wrestling team. And it's that kind of sacrifice where he would teach all day in Georgetown and then drove to Oakville to coach our team that last year. And that was profound on me, that dedication that he showed to a group of, at that time was only boys wrestling, but to a group of young men that he helped build and motivated. And for me, to this day, that still pushes me to say, hey, geez, he didn't have to do that, so that sort of helped me build the person I am, to say.
That's awesome. I'm hearing you talk about, how you pick the individuals, how you pick your athletes, how you recruit your athletes, and basically building the culture in your wrestling room. Yeah. I was part of an ethnographic study 4 years with a swim team, and I watched the coach who was incompetent in various aspects, technique, dealing with individuals. He would belittle some of his athletes, about their technique. He really he impeded their progress. How important is culture to you in your room? I mean, it sounds like it is, but how do you develop it?
You know what? It's huge. It's huge. From our team meeting, I sit down and we go over what my coaching goals are, what my coaching philosophies, and they know it pretty clear. And it always starts off with love. That's the first thing on my values, love, and we work down from there, and on a yearly basis, we do team retreat. And in that team retreat, we sit down as a group and we establish what our culture is going to be, what our goals for that year is going to be. Everyone does a vision board, what they want to achieve for the year. And then we sit down as a group and we then present that to the entire group. And it's a process we've done for years where we understand that we're just more than wrestling. It's a family, and it's a family atmosphere, because a lot of my athletes, I have athletes from Vancouver to North Carolina to Houston, right? So they're all over the place. And, I've met athletes that were from Iran. Right now we do have athletes from there, so it's having that sense that we're a family. And as a family, we eat together, we fight together, we wrestle together, but at the end of the day, it comes down to we have to like each other and we want to be there with each other in the wrestling room. And much like most coaches, like, I'm sure you went through this, we were taught originally to be just rough and just straight up cutthroat, because that was wrestling was about. And I started off that way. I was hard and take no prisoners sort of attitude. And athletes aren't like that anymore. They're just not like that. It's, and through that, you learn that there are different ways to get your athletes to perform. And fear is definitely not it. That's how we were taught. We came to practice, we worked hard, we didn't ask questions, we ran through the wall, even though there's a door right beside it. That's how we were, and I think what really changed me was coaching women as well. Because I don't know if you have any daughters or women, but
Two.
But the thing with female athletes is you tell them, you're in practice to do something. They want to know why. Whereas guys, they just do it. And with the female athletes, you got to do better of explaining. You've got to explain it to them. And after you've explained it and they understand, they'll do anything, but I think that for a lot of coaches in the country is changed who we are. Like one of I call him, is my big brother, I call it, Marty Calder at Brock University. There's a coach that, I've worked with, he invites us to in his program. And I think watching him as a coach evolve, and watching him, how his athletes absolutely adore him in his wrestling room. And it's a sense of, there's a family, and I hate to use the word steal, but as coaches, we borrow from different programs, and I see how he runs his program, and he's been the top program in the country. I don't know if you can count that many, but he's won obscene amount of national championships. And that's not because his athletes are any better than everybody else? It's because there's a culture that he's built, and it's a culture of working hard, a culture of family. You know, I've taken my athletes there for training camps, and you realize a lot of the similar things that good coaches do. It's right across the chart. And you know what? We were there at Christmas, and his athletes are coming over, and they're having a barbecue, or they're doing sledding, or they're meeting together, you know, at his house, doing a party. Just all those things that you realize good coaches do, and it sort of gives you a pat on the back to say, "Oh, okay, I am doing the right thing." Where it's more than just the wrestling room, and I think getting your athletes to buy into that, you know, and then hopefully one day they move on and they're running their own programs. You know, for me, I'm moving into that mentor role now where, as I said, we're getting old and we can't do this forever. You know, it's having a succession plan where you have athletes that can carry on the things that you've done, you know. And I mean, for me, watching those coaches and the way they run their programs, and watching some of the coaches who don't run their programs well, you learn from those things, and you pick and take the good pieces out of that. So for me to cut it short, and I don't cut too many things short, but culture is huge when it comes to building a strong program. And if you don't have a good culture in your program, you're gonna be a revolving doors. Athletes come in and out, and coaches come in and out, because nobody wants to work with you.
Mhm. You know, in doing this podcast and speaking to some of your athletes and some of Brock's athletes, it's really kind of opened my eyes. You know, you did talk about how, you know, we are perceived, our generation of coaching is perceived as, you know, hard-nosed, hard asses.
Yeah.
And, you know, you kind of like from the outside, you view these programs. Marty Calder, you
Yeah.
know, for the lack of a better term, you know, from the outside looking to, you know, in towards them is kind of a gruff individual. And
That's what you would think, but you get
yeah,
inside his house and it's a different story. And all the coaches are like that, to be honest. Like the coach that I'd say shocked me the most was Victor Zimmerman. And I took my team when I started coaching at U of A to Montreal. And I took them because for me, I wanted to go where the best wrestlers with my team, and I wanted my athletes to expose. And I got there, and this man was taking me around the city, showing me around, took me up to his cottage to show me his cottage, showed me where the best smoked meat place was, the best bagels. The day before I left, he brought me this big bag of bagels to see here. And through this whole time, I'm thinking, is this the same guy that
mhm.
I've watched that on the outside his athletes seem terrified of him? You know, it's just to see that as coaches, sometimes we inadvertently give off this aura of fear, but when you get in with them, we're human beings, right? And for
Mhm.
me, that was pretty cool. And just literally having Victor taking me all over Montreal, taking me into his home and his cottage and showing me his something that he loves and all that, it was just like, wow, you know. So it's I think people out there's got to understand that as coaches, we're human beings, and
Yeah.
we're here helping people achieve their goals. And sometimes what you see at the wrestling tournament isn't who we are.
Yeah. Well, and I could echo your thoughts on Victor Zimmerman there. I saw him this year at the, I'm trying to remember, Canada East Championships. And he was just sitting there. And I've known him just like you for years through my dad. And I'm terrified of the man.
Yeah, me too. I was.
But I haven't had that experience that you had.
Yeah.
But that's my fear.
Yes.
You know, I'm the one that's projecting that upon his mystique.
Exactly.
So you know, I guess I should take some time to maybe maybe be
You
a
know
little.
what? And it's at us. I can't express this more. It's every one of the coaches
Mhm.
there. I mean, it's because I think we get into that competitive mode, and you're only seeing us at a tournament. You're not seeing us every day after. And I can go right across the country. Justin Abdu, Mike Jones, who's one of my big mentors. These are guys that when you sit down with them, they're taking you into their homes and they're showing you who they truly are, you
Mhm.
know. But we sometimes judge them from the competitive nature of they're in a tournament. And every one of these guys, if you look at who they were ruthless killers on the wrestling mat as athletes, and they're very competitive. So we're seeing that competitive side of them and not actually seeing the true nature of the great human beings that they are. And sometimes and I've often thought about starting a coaching podcast where you get these guys on where they can truly see who they are, but I do think, sometimes we give off that aura of being the iron fisted individual that we have no feelings, and that truly isn't us.
Well, I mean, it would make it really hard to recruit some of these athletes if that's what this case too, right?
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah. Culture it's been, like I said, I watched it destroy athletes in that 4-year
Oh
study
yeah.
that I was in, just performance wise and, just, I saw and you talked about the female athletes, but I saw what happened when you had bad culture is the females started picking apart their teammates.
Yes.
So it was a really, really bad thing. And it's something that we can't ignore these days. And it's harped on more and more. I think I really was exposed to it through a gentleman. You talk about how you learn from coaches,
Yeah.
but I have actually done a few podcasts with a guy from the University of Michigan. He's just a former swim coach there,
Yeah.
Jim Richardson. If you ever get a chance, some of the podcasts that I have, those are the ones, if you're a coach, you should
Yeah.
check out because he talks about culture. He's a 14 Big Ten champion
Wow.
with his team. He was coach at the University of Michigan for 27 years. But he's actually changed my way and the way I approach kids wrestling and just empowering the kids. No longer do I have this focus on the outcome. It's it's the effort and attitude of what I work on with these kids.
And it's hard though, because we're athletes, we want to win.
Mm-hmm.
But it's understanding that the winning will take care of itself, and I
Yes.
mean, it's little things like, I'm now doing my advanced coaching diploma, and that has opened my eyes. It's learning. You need to make time for yourselves. Learning for us, I do monthly checkups on my athletes where I pick up the phone or I send them a message saying, hey, how are you doing? And for the athletes to recognize that we care for them more than just in the wrestling room. Like, how are you going? Like, how's school going? Like, how is life? Do you need anything? Do you need somebody to take you shopping or something? It's just for the athletes, it's huge, because then they come back to the wrestling room and they're saying, hey, coach actually cares. And because coach cares, we're going to give more. So that it's hard to build. Like, we've all down that road where we've made mistakes. None of us are perfect. We've all made mistakes. As I said, I started off as that take no prisoner coach, but we evolve. And I mean, I like the direction I'm heading as a coach, and I like the direction wrestling in Canada and my program is heading, because we are definitely, it's having a family and people caring about each other. And the sport, it's a ruthless sport. We had our team meeting a couple of days ago, and I'm one of those coaches. I let non-wrestlers come on our team, people that just want to try the sport. And this young man, he stepped up and he says, you know what, I learned a lot last year, and in my first year ever of wrestling, and I recognize wrestlers, you guys will eat your young. It's a ruthless place to be, but he says, I love it because I also understand that as hard as you guys are, you guys really truly care about each other. And that's why he came back, and this is a gentleman that I don't think he ever scored a point in the room, but he's back again for more. And his word was, because the culture and you guys made me feel that I belong, and I think that's something, that it's huge. You can't replace that in any program. You need that sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think people don't think about this, but that often. But the mental health, of these young kids when they go away from home. I mean, you're 1 year away from home, maybe for the first time. You don't have a support system there anymore because maybe you don't have friends. So you're alone in a university with umpteen, thousand people. And, you're being exposed to classes, the pressure of classes, the pressure of, just trying to fit in. And some kids get lost.
Oh, huge.
You
I've
know,
had
I'm,
an athlete who first practice, she was terrified and she was scared to even call me to tell me she's homesick, and I said, hey, take a couple of days, call your folks, do some stuff, like just be a student, but it's daunting on these kids to leave home away from mom and dad. And I think especially after COVID, things have changed. Things definitely, COVID sort of changed the landscape of sport and the way people are more aware. The emotional mindset is not the same as it was before COVID. And we have to coach in a world where they're scared. Like, we were locked up for 2 years and people are not okay yet. They're just not okay. And we can't just go back to status quo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like I was saying, is and I think what you're doing with your team is providing like a comfort area. And you talk about that young man who wrestles for you and didn't score a point, but he's back because you created a team of unity.
Yes.
For him to coexist in and to be a part of it and to be belonging. Everybody wants to be part of a team or feel belong, right?
Yeah.
It's great that you guys are doing that. That's amazing. I heard about more about your team from, I believe it was was it Aaliyah Nichols? Is that one of your kids? Okay. I wanted to make sure I got that right because I've done so many athletes here on the show that I kind of confused, but I thought that was yours. And she talked highly about how the program was run and how the mental aspect of your coaching has really helped her along.
Yeah. And you know what? And a few years ago, we started doing what I call mindfulness, and I found you're constantly telling your athletes, you need to work on your mental prep. You need to work on it. I actually made it a part of our practice. So at the beginning of practice, we'd sit down and we'd do what's called a mindfulness routine, where I get them to get centered. They'd sit on the mat and we go through a process of breathing, and then we meditate. Then we do a mental rehearsal, where they sit down and they rehearse and they watch a match, their best match. And we go through that process. And then we go through the positive affirmation at the end, where just before practice starts. And what I found was they like that because they get to park whatever stress they're coming in with from the day. And just sitting down on the mat and sort of leaving it. And we're always saying, oh, leave it at the door, leave it at the door. That's really hard to do. So we sit down and we do that, where we do our little mindfulness exercise, and they've grown to like it, and I've brought student, sports psychs into our program. And it's been tricky because as a coach, we tend to think the harder they work, the better it's going to be. But sometimes you've got to step away from that and realize if you're not well and you're not confident as a person, it makes it really, really hard now to go perform on the wrestling mat. Because in the grand scheme of things, all programs are all doing the same thing. What are we doing different? How are our athletes developing, where we're trying to develop the entire athlete, not just their physical, but their mental, their how they feel about themselves, their confidence. And wrestling is all about confidence when you step on the mat. So for us, we're trying to do a little bit more of that. It's hard because you got to step away from the running into the wall and sort of open the door and find different ways. But I'm evolving. I'm trying. There's days where you just come in and want to work hard, and we do that as well. But there's days I try to, I lead with that first thing in my core value, love, and from there work way down from there.
Where did the mindfulness come from? Where did that idea pop into your head?
You know what? A few years ago, and it came from COVID again. I had all this time in COVID, and I was still getting paid as a coach, and I come from that era where I don't want to do anything for free. So I watched tons of podcasts. I watched tons of coaching seminars. Through that whole COVID, I must have spent, hundreds of hours watching stuff on internet, doing podcasts through the United States, doing coaches seminar. And I took that time to sort of evolve myself as a coach, so for me, just like the athletes coming out of COVID, I was a different person, because we had lost something, and I wanted to make sure when we come back, we sort of approached it differently. So the mindfulness came from, it was a podcast it wasn't a podcast, it was a mental skills workshop that I went through. I wish I could remember the name from it. And I bored it. I won't say steal, bored it from there and made it our own.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we, as coaches, you try to educate yourself. And that's one of the things, when I talked about Jim Richardson, he said to me, Sean, everything I know, I borrowed from other people. I mean, I am the person because of the people around me. So, and he shares everything. He shares everything. He sends me books. He sends me, articles, videos, whatever he can. I forget where I was going with that. See, that's the concussion coming in. Thanks. I'll blame it on that. Yeah. Just bettering yourself to become a better mentor for these young kids and be able to support them. Because ultimately, most of us have given up our dream of competing.
Yes.
Not you.
Oh, Jesus.
You're still going. You're doing both. You're burning what do they say? The candle at both ends.
Yeah.
Making yourself a better coach, but the mindfulness that I think will carry on, not just during the wrestling season, but carry on through their studies, carry on through when they graduate. Like you said, you're cheering them on, but you're preparing them for life.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, again, I didn't invent that. I learned it from my coaches, because I came from where, I'll be honest, I probably didn't learn how to read and write till I was about 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And coming from Jamaica, moving to Canada, and I had so many people that helped me to where I am. I remember going off to college from Oakville, Ontario, and failing everything. And I had a professor that sat me down and worked with me, So it's just the person that you see in front of me. I can't even begin to thank and count the amount of people that have been involved in helping me, and helping me become the person I am. And it's been they say it takes a village. I think it took an army to get me where I am, because there's been so many people that helped me, right? And helped me become. And I think for me, it instilled that culture of giving back, that culture of there's more than just wrestling, but wrestling, if it wasn't for wrestling, I wouldn't be who I am. And that's why I'll always be involved in wrestling. It was what kept me motivated. Somebody told me, well, if you wanted to wrestle, you have to figure a way to do school, so I figured a way to get a university degree. To this day, I have no clue how I did that, but it took me 10 years to get a university degree, and I got one. I'm a high school teacher, but it was because of wrestling and because so many people along the way helped me, and I just didn't want to let them down. There's no way I wanted to let them down, and I think that catapulted me and everything. And it was because they instilled a culture in me that I thank all of them for that.
If you can think about the one person that probably was the biggest influence in your career, whether it's an athlete or a coach or teacher, a relative, who would that be?
You know what? There's been so much, but I think it's probably my foster mother.
Yeah.
Because she, took me on and, gave me a family, took care of me. And she's the one that provided that sense of stability, provided that home, provided that that place where I could go and I wasn't scared, that warmth, the food, the support, and I think she would be that person that I think, and as I said, I've had so many, but when I fall back on, if it wasn't for her, Carol Kosh, I wouldn't be the person I am. And she fought for me, man. She just fought. She did everything. She helped me. She, put me into a family where, I looked around, nobody looked like me, but she made me feel, she made me feel like I belong. And I think it's her, if I could thank anyone and help me. And as I said, there's been many, but she definitely, my foster mother was the person that I think, she guided me. She saw something in me and she was there to push me and say, hey, you know what, you can do it. And she took care of all the other things that I didn't have to worry about eating. I didn't have to worry about paying fees. I didn't have to worry about all those things because she just took care of it.
Mm-hmm. You said she fought for you, and there's something that we talked about before we did the broadcast, and you've been pretty vocal about it on the social media too. But right now you're in a battle for your kids.
Yes.
Do you want to explain a little bit about that?
You know what? I was in a scenario in a relationship where, and it's the two of us. We worked well. We're good parents, and it was just a scenario where it just wasn't working. I was living a lifestyle I I didn't want to live like that. I was living in a cold basement, we hadn't, been in the same room for over 6 years. And my daughter, again, how kids can push you to say you need to do something. She has a huge, strong sense of family and relationship. And I really didn't want her to think that relationship that we were having was what a relationship was like. Because I wanted, I take my daughter on daddy-daughter dates where I take her out and I say, I want to create a daughter that I'm going to create a nightmare for any man that tries to date her because I'm giving her everything. I'm taking her out. But then I wasn't living like that at home, and I said I needed to make a change. So I made that change. I decided, hey, you know what? It's not working for us. We need to move on. And in that change, there was some animosity. And, I'm truly fighting to be an equal parent. I'm not saying I want to take the kids 100% because that's not fair. The kids need both their parents, but, it was brought to court and it was a daunting to this day. It brings me chills. I don't think my lawyer was prepped. I don't think he was. It was he was pretty convinced that they had to prove that I was not a fit father, and from all thoughts, everyone I spoke to, there's no way they can prove that. So we went in thinking, hey, okay, all right, everything is going to be status quo. We'll get shared custody. But we walked in and I'll tell you, it was the scariest feeling. I had a 75-year-old, per se, judge walked in. And I hate to bring racial anything into it, but he walked into the room and he saw a black man with dreads and he saw a white mom on the other side. And right off the bat, he had made up his decision. And it was daunting. He started yelling at both judges, at both lawyers. Can't believe you guys let it go to this point. And I'm like, wow. And I'm sitting here fighting to share time with my kids. Not that I want them all to share. And he went on and he said, well, both parents, they're at two different sides of the argument. One parent wants shared and one parent wants primary custody where the other parent only sees the kids twice in every 2 weeks. And I'm sitting there, I'm getting confused and I'm thinking, I want shared. Like, what's wrong with shared? So now the stress starts and, the judge says, you guys have 10 minutes to go decide something that's better, that's a little bit closer to the middle. So then we went outside and at this whole time, you're pressured to come up with something. And I'm sitting there I'm just shell shocked. What's going on here? So I'm getting, oh, well, you can see the kids 4 times in every 2 weeks. And I'm like, what? So then we settled on, 5 and 9 or 5 and 9 nights, 10 days. And I'm sitting there. Ultimately, we came back and the judge agreed to exactly what the other side wanted was primary custody. And then when you look at the percentage, I get my kids 36% of the time to 34% of the time to 66%. And the judge initially said the parents are at two opposite ends, and then you come back and he awards what he was actually saying was wrong. So I'm sitting here, never been in this scenario before. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm shell shocked, and then I'm walking out of the courtroom and my lawyer saying, you know what, maybe I'm the wrong lawyer for this case. I should let my assistant do it because she's a female. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, like what's going on? Like we've gone to where literally for the first 2 months, my kids were doing shared custody. I had the kids for 1 week. She had the kids for a week and the kids were settling in, and for any transition is hard. But to go from being able to see my kids were literally, yes, was I busy as a coach? Who isn't busy as a coach? I often took the kids to tournaments with me, but I brought my kids to school every morning, picked them up. I was actively involved. I never missed a student teacher night, things like that. I was involved. I was volunteering at their school, but out of fear on the other side, convinced the court that because they were the primary parents at home, they should get the grand amount of parenting time, and I'm looking at that and in my mind, again, I'm still trying to think logical. I'm like, you couldn't have a parent at home if there wasn't a parent out working, making sure resources were there to have a family where my family had everything they need. They had food, like my kids, anything they want. So it wasn't like I was a deadbeat dad. I was going out every day, not being able to spend time with my kids and providing for my kids. But in turn, that came back to, I'd hate to say bite me in the foot, but it would have been better off if I was at home all the time. But if I was at home all the time, we wouldn't be able to survive. So it's still confusing for me. And I'm sure it's confusing for many dads out there because you're providing for your family. But on the other side, you're deemed that, hey, because you weren't at home with your family, and in all means, my kids have been in full-time school now my son's in grade 5, my daughter's in grade 2. So it's not like they were sitting at home, but it's the way the system is set up, and it's not set up to favor dads because it's set up in a sense that, and moms, as I told you, my biggest motivation is my foster mom. Moms do so much for their kids, but dads, we want to do it as much, right? I want to be there, be involved in my kid's life. So I'm fighting right now to have shared custody. I never want to have full. I'm fighting to have shared because I think our kids need both their parents. And I'm again, I'm growing up 2 young kids and they're biracial and the world isn't fair. And if you don't have somebody to navigate that world with them, that yes, my kids, they might be the same complexion as you. They're just right. But in the grand scheme of things, they're still looked as 2 Black kids because they have hair like mine, and the world, it's changed, but it's still pretty daunting place for them, and having their father that's gone through that to navigate it with them and teach them is huge. Having their father in their life to say, hey, you know what? Okay, you fell, but let's get up and see what we can do. Let's get up and move forward. Those little things that, that dads and moms, they do it too. But I don't know if dads were rougher on the edge, but our kids need to know that it's going to be okay when they fall and that it's okay to have a bruise, that it's okay to hurt, that it's okay. Everything is going to be okay. And sometimes having 2 parents pushing that and helping that is huge. And for me, just seeing my kids, 10 times out of the month isn't enough for me. It isn't fair. So I'm going to fight and I want my kids to know that I'm fighting for them. I don't know what the end road is going to be, but I'm going to fight to get shared because I want to be there for my kids. I love my kids. They love their parents. And I think as parents, we got to understand that it's not about us. It's about them. And to literally think that your kids don't want to be with one parent, I think that's cruel. I think that's cruel to your kids and any parent that wants to take their kids away from one parent. I mean, you need to shake your head. Sounds harsh, but you need to give your head a shake, plain and simple.
Mhm. Sounds like you're in for a good fight. I mean, it's all worth it though.
It's daunting, but wrestling has prepped me for this, so thank God.
Yes. Yeah, wrestling does prep you for a heck of a lot of things that comes your way in life. It doesn't it?
Thank you very much. Yeah.
What, Owen, it has been amazing talking to you. It's been an hour, man, and it
Oh, God, we've gone that long. Wow.
yeah, it doesn't even seem actually more because we had some interruptions.
Yeah.
So I don't want to take any more time from you because
Thank
I
you.
know you're a busy lad over there it's early in the morning, I think, for you guys. Not too early,
Just
but
going on 12 minutes after 10.
12 minutes after 10.
Yeah.
All right. But I want to thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And best of luck to you and everything that you're doing, whether it's getting back on the mats at the veterans
Yeah.
or whether it is, in the wrestling room with your kids you're coaching or at home with the kids you are fighting to have to spend time with.
Thank you very much, sir. All right. Take care.
Yeah.